here at Magfest with Bladesmith /Armor Bill Collison. Thank you for speaking with me.
Oh, thanks for coming by.
I'd like to start by asking, is there a piece, a weapon here that you're the most proud of and why?
Probably be the first piece I did on the show, which was the Games Workshop 40K chainswords.
Chainsword? Mm-hmm. Can you describe that?
The chainsword's basically you take a chainsaw, put it in kind of a sword format that's powered, and
so it's sort of a modern kind of sword, not patterned on anything.
Not patterned on anything. It's actually based off basically a tabletop game.
Oh, okay. How do you know when a piece that you're working on is finished? A blade is finished.
For me, that's kind of sometimes a hard question because even after I finish the piece, I'm going, could I have done more to it? So I'm never really 100% sure when one of the blades I'm working on is where I want it to be at. Because even after I finish a piece, I'll look at it going, well, I could have done this, or I could have done that. So hopefully just the next time I start making something, I add that into it.
Okay. Now, do you work on the blade itself and the, I forget what they call that little strip of metal that goes into the hilt?
Yeah, it looks like
for the guards?
That's okay.
Generally at the shop, I work on blades, guards, pommels.
Oh, okay.
So I do pretty much everything.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. I thought the way the format of the show was, I haven't seen it, was people work on pieces.
And the format of the show, it depends on what is needed from us. If I have to do a lot of roughing on a blade and then pass it over to Matt to do the finishing, we'll do that. Or if I have to work on a guard piece, like there's a few guards during the show that I've worked on, help sand down, get finished, go to shape. So it all depends on what's needed at that time for that piece. Because generally, like Ilya's the primary for doing most of the forging, and Matt will usually end up doing most of the finishing as far as polishing and sharpening. In between that, we all have our different things where we'll work on different parts of it.
Okay, all right. Is there any particular historical period or something like that you like working on?
For me, as far as, I mean, not with the show, but armor-wise, I'm more into late 15th, early 16th century armor.
Okay.
I'm also involved in some science fiction clubs, like Star Wars clubs, so I help with that as well. Sword-wise, I'm pretty open. I like everything from, say, Celtic era, historically, all the way up to 17th century.
What inspires you?
I love working with my hands. As far as the show goes, with the pieces we're doing, I'm a video game fan, I'm an anime fan, science fiction growing up that way. I really want the fans to like what we're doing. You're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for them as well. You never know when there's a fan out there who really wanted that piece to be made, and when you finally make it, you're hoping to make them happy too. So it's kind of a combination of what we expect and what we want our fans to really like. It goes back and forth.
So, what is your most important bladesmithing tool? Is there something special you need in your workspace?
Our biggest thing at the shop for me is basically our big sanders. A lot of the work we do, even some of the finer work, comes from our sanders. We have some large sanders that really do roughing, with changing the grits out to do some final polishing. We also have some smaller setups to do a lot of detail work. So honestly, our sander's the biggest tool we have.
Now, is there anything sort of particular to you that you just like having around, or like some people like music playing or something like that?
Generally, when I'm working, I do have a set of headphones in, and it could be anywhere. I'm listening to a book, listening to music, listening to a movie. It just depends on my mood that day, and it can change throughout the day. But I do like to have that, just that background in my ears. Sometimes it gets a little loud, and I like to just sit there and focus and go back and finish what I'm doing.
Is there an element of bladesmithing you enjoy working with most, or working on most, and why?
I don't know if there's one certain element. I love making blades. Doing the guards or the hilts are nice because you can really get fancy with them. Or you can keep them simple and still have them come out really nice. People think, oh, you put a lot of work. I'm like, actually, that was a simple guard. Another aspect, pommels. Depending on the piece we're working on, I like doing certain things on pommels that really brings out that detail. So again, there's no one particular thing I like. It just depends on the piece I'm working on.
Have you mixed historical periods? Have you made any weapons that are sort of a hybrid, just for fun?
We've done a few. There's a couple pieces that we do on a regular basis that are kind of fantasy historical-ish, where we'll have the option of really either making it pretty simple or going really fancy with it. And that really makes it nice because we can switch out the guards. We're going, well, this guard will look cool with this blade. And we'll take this pommel, and it could just be a mix of 3 different time periods. And sometimes they come out nice, and sometimes it's like, nah, we're not doing that again.
Yeah, good work. Hey, experimentation works. All right. How did you start bladesmithing, and why do you continue doing it?
Actually, I started. I've known Kerry Stagmer for about a little over 20 years now. I was a customer first, and then started working with him. He taught me how to make armor first, and then eventually I started working with the blades. So blades were always secondary to me. Armor was my primary. Nowadays, though, it's pretty much blades all the time. That's what I do. Every day I go to work, we're making swords. So it's just been a transgression over time. It's like, this is what we need to be done, and that's what I do.
So when you worked on armor, was it plate, chainmail?
Everything I did was plate. For the past 18 years, I worked out at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and I was the armor for the full contact jousting troupe.
Oh, okay.
So for those 3 months out of the year, I was kind of like their mechanic. They break it, need it, I make a new one or fix it. That's pretty much how it went.
So that armor that they wore, because I've seen those jousting events, is it, how heavy is it compared to what it was in reality?
In reality, it's probably a little bit more, maybe a quarter or half a weight what the original were. Original suits were a lot lighter. Materials have changed over the years since I've been involved in it. But those guys, depending on the size of the person, were anywhere from about 60, 70 pounds all the way up to about 120 pounds fully kitted out. But again, these guys were jousting more than period jousters ever did. The Maryland jousters were jousting 3 to 4 times a day, and you're doing that for almost 3 months. Every weekend, so I'm just taking a lot bigger beating than what those did. But nowadays, with some of the new materials and some of the guys who've done historical research, armor's actually been able to get lightened up a lot more and still keep the strength. So it's been nice. You see, everyone talks about with bladesmiths, heat treating blades to harden them. Well, you can do that with armor now with a lot of the new materials.
So, during the Maryland jousting, did you ever see your armor take a blow that just kind of shocked you at how intense it was, or anything?
Anytime during that, anything with a headshot was always like, oh, I hope he's okay, or the helmet did what it was supposed to do, might glance off. But I've seen some dead-on full shots, and the guy's like, oh, I didn't know I got hit. I was like, oh, you did. I've also seen a couple hits where the armor completely crumpled, but the guy's okay because the armor did what it was supposed to do. Yeah. Then it's just a lot of repair work.
Yeah. I guess you can be pretty proud when your armor takes the beating it's expected to.
When you see those guys and the hits they were taking, and they come back going, yeah, I felt it, but it didn't hurt. And you're going, that's a relaxing feeling because the stuff I worked on, I was responsible for their safety. If that armor failed because of me, they're getting hurt or possibly even more, and I didn't want to have that happen. So there was quite a bit of attention to detail, always making sure the guys checked on the gear. If I ever found something wrong, it was either trade out a piece or make a new piece for them.
So as far as fitting the pieces to them, is it how much does the armor fit to them versus how much padding or whatever you put in?
The armor mostly fits like a second skin, even with the padding that they wear under it. So you want it that close, because what you don't want to do is take an impact and have whatever you're getting hit with hit the armor, and then that loose-fitting armor hits you as well. So you're actually getting hit twice. And that second shot would usually hurt a lot more. So the better fitting your armor is, the more it's able to do its job, and the less actually you feel.
So is the armor tailored to each individual?
Tailored to each individual.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And do they pay for the armor? Do they get to keep it, or is it's the customer?
Most of the guys get it. The gentleman who ran the troupe, a lot of the armor belonged to him, but also a lot of the guys had their own suits who would make their own stuff, and it was just back and forth. Unless if they needed a piece that they didn't have, we usually had extra, and we did our best job to fit it to them as well as we can. Breast and back plates, especially after taking a lot of impacts, always had to be readjusted.
Did anyone ask for a personal, someone outside of the fair ask for you to make a personal set for them?
We would get those requests at times. A lot of people didn't understand when you tell them the price.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people out there who want their own full suits of armor. Whether or not they want it for jousting or they just want something that they can wear as a costume, it all depends on the customer.
As you can tell, I'm an armor fan, so that's why.
I have my own suit at home, so I know.
Awesome. All right. How did your first professional sale of a blade or armor change your process of working on it?
For me, it was my first piece of armor, but it also went through with swords as well. To know that the person that bought it, when they come back to you, really appreciative of what you did, they really love it, or sword-wise, they loved how it feels, they loved how they felt in their hands while they were using it. That's a big deal. It's kind of get a good glow about it. This person's really happy, and when they go out and use it, their friends are going to be like, "Where'd you get that?" It's like, well, these people made it, and it travels, it goes through, and all the circles between sword fighting, theatrical, it all passes around. People know originally what blades. This year at the fair, a new jousting team came in, more theatrical, good guys, made a bunch of swords personally for a couple of their nights, and just tailored for them. Ran across one of the other guys who actually had a blade that I had worked on, and it's one of his favorite blades, so it made me feel that good going, I'm really glad you liked it. And we've actually talked about doing another project for another sword. So when these guys go out and do the shows, it's our blades. And for me personally, on a couple, they're ones that I personally did. So it makes you feel good.
So over the years, as you've been making blades, have you come across any problems or things you feel like you needed to change with your overall method?
I wouldn't say the overall method. A lot of it depends on the people who have it and what they're using it for. Stage combat people, I generally like to make the edge a little thicker, because most stage theatrical people don't block their swords with the flat of the blade. Everybody likes to go edge to edge, which is really, really bad.
Yeah.
But for theatrical use, that's what everybody wants, because when you see medieval times, the bangs, sparks, that's what they want to do. So for certain troops or certain things, we'll actually keep the edge a little thicker than what we normally would. Then if it's a crew that's like, well, we want to do some cutting, that might change the material we use, and also what style of blade we're going to go with. Generally, swords that are made for cutting are going to cost more because they have to put up with more abuse. But the stage guys, we do a lot of stuff for stage people. And like I said, for jousters, being in a jousting troupe myself, I know what those swords go. Jousting troops beat them. They beat their swords.
Well, why else would you join a jousting troupe except to
beat on each other? Yes.
Yeah. What role does the bladesmith have in society?
They're an artist. And that's the biggest thing nowadays. There's a lot of science behind blade making and hardening and everything else, but it's really still an artwork. When you make a sword, for the most part, it's a piece of art. You know, this is something that's going to last somebody for as long as they take care of it. Just like any other sculpture or anything like that. That's what it is. It's an art form. Learned it throughout high school. Always loved art, and those are things to remember. Nowadays, if you look at original people who collect swords, or like Japanese pieces of swords, they're considered artwork. You get them, you hang them up, and now you display them. They're not being used for what they really were. That's pretty much where it's come to.
Do you ever consider the fact that your sword will be passed on for hundreds of years? You know, obviously they can last that long, right?
I don't think about it too often. I collect some original stuff myself, so I guess at times I should go, yeah, that could happen. But I just don't really go past that part.
Yeah.
At the shop, we've made some really nice blades and personalized some blades for people, and we know that they're going to take care of this. It's probably something they're just not going to get rid of, unless their kids decide to get rid of it. But, 50, 60 years from now, I can be like, hey, this is considered a classic.
Yeah.
I won't be here, but I generally don't think about it too much.
Well, I guess if we had an apocalyptic collapse of civilization, your weapons might end up being used, a heroic weapon.
We hear that a lot. See comments like that on our YouTube channel. It's, zombie apocalypse, we're all going here. These guys got it settled. They're like, yeah, but what about power? If they don't have power, it's like, well, we got a stream and we can do a water wheel. We know how to do that. They're like, oh. So yeah, we've got that covered.
Yeah.
We run out of bullets, we got swords.
Yeah. You'll be the new era's armory.
Yep.
All right. What movies, books, artwork, or other creative media in science fiction or fantasy have inspired you?
Oh, wow.
And you mentioned Star Wars.
Star Wars, of course. Another classic is Excalibur, the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us grew up going, oh, Knights in Armor, Excalibur? Yes.
Yeah.
Science fiction-wise, I've always been Star Wars, Battlestar, Galactica. I'm kind of old school on that.
Old one, not the new one?
I love the new one, but I am a classic fan. Sorcerer in the Stone, a lot of the old Disney stuff. It's just such a wide variety of stuff. I know for one of our shows we did Voltron sword.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, when Matt was like, yeah, we're doing the Voltron sword, I was like, you know how much I like you. Yes, I know. So that was another time when an old 80s classic was like, it made me very happy.
Yeah.
But any of those really growing up, the Highlander, any of those old shows really growing up did it. I still remember Knights of the Round Table, a lot of the old 50s and 60s shows. I enjoyed those. I'm only 43, so it's like those are classics for me.
Yeah.
But those really set you in mind going, well, here's a knight, here's a sword, this is what it's supposed to be. Then you see Excalibur, here's guys in armor. And then some of the sci-fi series, you see guys like with Highlander, and everybody's using swords. And of course, then you get to Star Wars, you've got lightsabers.
Yeah.
And as you go into Star Wars lore, which I did, canon, swords were swords. Before even the lightsaber, you got the crystal swords, and blah, 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 blah. And then there's D&D.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons was a big influence on everybody.
Yeah.
For everybody. Blood group, it's not a blood group, it's a for. Huh? Plate mail. No, plate mail came up because of D&D. It's either plate or mail.
Yeah.
So, all that, all those games, all those RPGs and everything else is pretty much influence everything we do. I mean, it's fun to do a period piece, but then every now and then it's like, well, let's do something fun. Let's do something sci-fi, let's do something, from some fantasy work. That's always been fun. So, just growing up, those are the classics. Excalibur was a big one.
Do you think, what do you think the most famous sword is nowadays? Is there one that people just, I don't know.
There will always be two. Excalibur, of course. everybody pretty much knows Excalibur from all the King Arthur movies, what it might be. And the groups I hang around, probably the next one's going to be the Highlanders.
Is there a blade you would like to create but haven't done so yet, and what is it?
One thing I like to do, and you see me do it on the show, is I like to do cutting demos. I'm actually working with Billy at some point to actually make my own cutting katana, and I'd also like to do a medieval European style sword as well. I don't really have a specific from a show or anything like that, but having a Japanese katana for cutting and having a European broadsword for cutting would actually be something I'd like in my collection.
Oh, okay. Actually, my question was, have you ever created a replica of Conan, the barbarian sword?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did it for another series. It was called Super Fan Builds, and I wasn't around for that one, but they did do a Conan build. And the guy that got the sword is actually local to Baltimore.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. But you haven't created a Conan?
I haven't done it myself. I mean, it's a great sword. It's cool.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't mind having one, but it's not on my wish list.
Okay. All right.
I'm a sucker for historical pieces.
Oh yeah. I'm just trying to think of just going through history. Do you like rapiers?
Rapiers are fun to build.
Yeah.
They suck.
They suck? How so?
One, you're dealing with a very long, narrow blade, and even after it's either forged out or you're grinding from a blank, to get the feel right and what we call diamond, get that nice diamond cross section right, there's a lot of work. And then when you're getting into the guards, rapiers are known for one being long, thin, but then you have your guard. And those guards can go anywhere from very simple to extremely elegant and detailed. And doing those guards actually takes quite a long time to build. And then after you get the guard where you want it, now you got to make the pommel. So you have to pick what style pommel do you want to do. And then there's the wooden handles, and it's just, rapiers are probably even in the shop one of our more complicated builds.
Yeah.
There's so much to making them right.
So it sounds like when you get a rapier order, you're sort of ambivalent about...
When we get rapier orders, we can only make so many in a week.
Yeah.
And generally the guys I'll start working on, myself or Matt will start working on the blades, Ellie will start working on the guards, and then it just becomes a mix. Everybody's doing everything to get them done. So it's a lot of work. There's one at the shop right now that the guys are working on, which is based on a late 16th century piece, but it's a full Damascus blade, period guards, stone set in the pommel. It's a horn handle. I mean, it has a matching dagger. So it's $6,000 or $7,000 set.
Yeah.
And to watch it go together and how much time's put into it, it's really a lot of work.
Do you do the sheaths as well?
We generally don't do the sheaths ourselves. Every now we have one of the guys at the shop will do sheaths for some of the stuff, but that's generally not a big request. And if you do a proper period sheath, they're not cheap because they're mostly wooden. Plus you got to fit it to the blade, and it's another long process. We just did a Viking sword for a guy, and he wanted a sheath with it. And he probably spent about $6,000 on the total piece.
Just on the sheath?
Well, that's the sword and the sheath.
Sorry. Okay.
The sheath itself was about $500.
Okay.
Because it's actual period wood, fur lined inside, the whole 9 yards.
You know, that doesn't sound like a bad price for an authentic, sheath.
But nowadays, a lot of people are like, you hear that kind of money, and it's like, why would you? And it's like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's what I think a lot of things is. A lot of our standard production stuff is what we feel is not that expensive, but when you want to get into period correct, doing those type of things, prices do go up because it's a lot more work.
Yeah. A lot of labor.
Yes.
Get out of here.
All right. Well, That's all the questions I have. Do you have any final thoughts or comments?
Mostly just if someone's interested in doing this, find your local blacksmithing guild and just practice. You know, your pieces get better the more you learn. You never stop learning.
Do you have your own website for your personal?
I have an Instagram where I post some stuff up, and it's Caliban1776.
Can you spell that?
Kaliban 1776.
Okay.
And I'll usually throw up some of my side stuff on there.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, thanks for speaking with me.
Oh, thank you.
Please visit chrisalvarez.com for more cool stuff. That's CRISALVAREZ.com. Thanks for listening and keep imagining the future.